In the recently commissioned People's National Party poll, we see where right now the opposition People's National Party's leader is neck and neck almost with the ruling government. Is this something to be concerned about? Or is it just much ado about nothing? We look at this and more on the conversation. First up, we want to find out. Well, for those who are just joining us, welcome to the conversation. Damion Gordon, UWI lecturer in public policy.
Thanks for having me.
I want to know, we see where at first the People's National Party was trailing behind significantly. And February, they gained a few grounds, or a bit of a ground. This last poll now, they're actually ahead. Is that something for the government to be worried about, or it's just much ado about nothing?
Well, obviously there's something for any government to be worried about. The goal of politics is for you to stay ahead of your competitors or your opponents. And therefore any leader and any government would want to know that in a poll, which measures how voters perceive for political parties, any leader or political party would want to be ahead in polls, yes? So that must be concerning, considering the fact that the Prime Minister just a couple of years ago was extremely popular, even more popular than the party itself. That was a part of the reason why the Jamaica Labour Party was re-elected by a landslide, because of the popularity of the leader and the perception that the JLP was doing a fairly good job during difficult circumstances. It is evident that the tide of public opinion has changed, and that has negatively impacted the popularity of the Prime Minister as well as the popularity of the government. And the opposition has gained some traction, and this can be credited to several factors. One, it's a two-horse race. So usually in a two-horse race, when one loses, the other really gains. So many of those who were undecided previously are not sure previously. Some may have now decided to give the PNP a chance. Another factor may be the fact that the base of the People's National Party, those who were on the fence previously and were not so sure previously, they have decided to come home and are now saying, we want to give the PNP a chance again. So any gain for any political party under these circumstances and with a two-horse race is something that the political party would perceive to be positive.
So it's not a case whereby the race is actually good, it's just that they're looking at both horses and you either choose.
And that is really the reality, because if you look at the polling data, a significant number of those persons polled are still undecided. They still don't believe that either of the two political parties is a credible option for governing the country at this point in time. And they're still undecided. So the JLP's loss has not meant that the PNP has gained precipitously. The PNP has gained only marginally. That is why they are still virtually neck and neck, which means that there's a pervasive sense of apathy among Jamaicans towards both political parties.
So then there's no real difference, if we should look at it then, between the poll that was conducted in February, where voter apathy was the winner, and now it's just that voter apathy is marginally losing.
Yes, but the reality is that in our political system, which uses the first past the post, where you just need to get more than your opponent, a political party can win with a simple majority. So in some contexts, such as maybe Haiti and other countries, where a political party requires an absolute majority, which means that you have to get 50% plus one of the total votes cast to win. We don't have that requirement here. So regardless of how low the voter turnout is, one political party will win and one will lose. You just simply need to outperform your opponent. So as a political party, your goal is to ensure that you're always ahead of your opponent. It doesn't matter the margin by which you're ahead. You just simply need to be polling better than your opponent. Yes?
So as it stands now, based on the fact that the margin of error is something 3%.
Yes.
Therefore, when you look at both leaders of the respective parties, then you can't justifiably say that one is significantly ahead. Then there's pretty much in the same boat.
Not significantly ahead, but if you were so popular and leading the other by double digit,
means that you're losing.
A couple months ago, You are so much more popular than your opponent to the extent that you are leading your opponent by double digit. And now it's within the margin of error. The opponent has remained steady and their favorability is growing. Yours is declining precipitously. That is even more problematic and should be even more concerning. So by the next poll, it is fair to expect that the opposition leader's favorability may jump slightly ahead of the Prime Minister's even more. That is particularly concerning where the Prime Minister is concerned, because he is very popular, and he was very popular, and he was leading the opposition leader by double digit. Now it is down to less than a point. I mean, that must be very concerning.
So based on some of the feedback that Don Anderson had put out, he was saying that this resurgence in PNP popularity might be owed to the fact that they are looking to reconnect with their approximately 160,000 voters that they have lost over the period. And he also said that the JLP lost a negligible 4,000 over the same period that the other one has lost. So we're looking at one bleeding. So hemorrhaging, if that's the best word to use.
Yeah, that's a good word to use. So remember that people need to also recognize that the PNP has been in a state of internal division and conflict for the better part of the last 10 years. Remember that they had a very bitter leadership race between Lisa Anna and Mark Golding.
Yes.
And there are still many supporters of the People's National Party who have still not come into the big tent, for lack of a better word, or have come to accept, you know, the authority of Mark Golding as a leader. And many of them have expressed those concerns, especially on social media. So the JLP now, on the other hand, the party has generally coalesced around Andrew Holness's authority as leader of the party. I think it's one JLP and it has been one JLP for a long time. The PNP, on the other hand, has been divided. What may very well be happening is that some of those who are on the fence about Mark Golding, they are now slowly and gradually accepting and coalescing around him. So some of those who previously said, we're not so sure about Mark Golding, he doesn't represent a true PNP, he's a capitalist, he's not the typical socialist. But now they may decide, the PNP may be making attempts, or may have been making attempts over the last several months or so, to reach out to those disgruntled voters, and those attempts may now be reaping some success to the extent that some of them have decided that they're going to give him a chance. They are slowly warming up to him, and that could very well be what has been happening. So
as far as our democracy is concerned, what kind of indication are we getting? How would you describe the health of our democracy based on what we are seeing there?
We should be very concerned. We should be very concerned because I think the personal popularity of Andrew Holness and Mark Golding is within the 20% region. And in terms of the party's standing, I think it's also within, correct me if I'm wrong, the party's standing is also within the 20% region per party, which means that the majority of persons polled don't have any confidence in either political parties or the candidates for leadership, prime minister. And that is particularly concerning that the majority of those polled believe that neither political party and neither candidate for prime minister is credible. Yes? They're apathetic, they are disinterested, they have lost confidence, and it's not just reflected in the polls, but it's also reflected in voter turnout. The trend over the last several election cycles has been declining voter turnout. So the voter turnout has been progressively declining since the 1990s, to the extent that in the last election it was under 50%, which was one of the lowest voter turnouts, the lowest voter turnout in the country certainly since the 1983 general election, which was boycotted by one political party.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now, looking at the whole issue now of voter turnout, well, we're seeing where 44.8% specifically has decided that, well, they have not decided whether or not they'll be voting. Yeah. That's down from 51% in July 2022. Mind you, it's only up by 0.8% from February. So it's still an indication that we don't really care about what you're doing. Is that what we should take from it?
No, it's not that You're talking about the voters.
Voters.
It's not that the voters don't care, but I think that what the voters perceive is that both political parties have nothing new to offer to Jamaica. They believe that both political parties have failed the country because the country has been led by both political parties since the 1960s. And to the extent that the many issues have been long-standing. People talk about corruption, people talk about security, people talk about the state of public infrastructure, we talk about the state of the essential services, we talk about employment. So there are so many issues that are long-standing, and citizens feel that both political parties or neither political parties has adequately addressed these issues despite alternating state power for the last, how many years of independence are we into now? 60 plus years. Mm-hmm. We compare the state of Jamaica today to where it was in the 1960s in terms of the inequality, the lack of access of opportunities, the marginalization, the state of the infrastructure, the lack of high-paying jobs and high incomes, the situation with crime and violence, the high level of corruption. People don't feel that either political party has governed the country credibly. And it's just people being frustrated and saying that we have just lost faith and confidence in the political directorate. Oh,
so that means then, because trying to contextualize what we just looked at in terms of the poll findings, you just listed the top 5 challenges that Jamaica has been facing. Yes. And right now, we're just coming off the heels of pay increase. We just looked at the reformation.
Yes.
So with that, could these not be contributing factors to this low rating for the Prime Minister and therefore the People's, the People's National Party looks better because of these things?
Yes. Remember, one of the reasons why Andrew Ness would have, secured state power as leader of the party was because of the perception that he was a breath of fresh air. He was a post-independence leader. He was young, he connected with the young people. And he promised to be a reformist, somebody who's new and different, and therefore people expected a new outlook, a new direction. And it has been, going into 10 years now, he has been the Prime Minister. And some of the issues that were there before him are still there today and have worsened in some contexts. So he promised to be tough on corruption and accountability. We have not seen any improvement where those two governance issues are concerned. He promised to be tough on crime and violence. That was one of his major, one of the major things on his platform, that I'm going to be tough on crime. So the promise that he made and the promise that people voted him into office on, people feel that he has not honored those promises, and to that extent there's a feeling that he has not distinguished himself from those who came before him.
So it's more the same old. So
it's more the same old, pretty much.
He's tone deaf then?
It's not, I'm not saying that he is tone deaf. I've always said that politics has a morality of its own, and certain decisions are based on expediency, convenience. It's easy for us to say this is the decision that should be made or that is the decision that should be made.
Right, so hold the thought until we come back. Yes. You're watching The Conversation. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Conversation, where we're having a discussion with UWI Assistant Lecturer Damion Gordon. Welcome back. So just before the break, we started looking at the fact that many Jamaicans, or most of those who polled, 53% to be specific, were saying that the country is headed in the wrong direction.
Yes.
While it's timely that we saw a publication from the Miami Herald, they're actually describing the current government, or the leader government, as heading in the right direction, where Jamaica is gaining its place among the Caribbean as one of the leaders and among the world, if we might say that.
Yes.
And some persons from the JLP camp are actually arguing that this poll is contrived and fictitious, who should we believe?
Yes, I mean, pollsters, especially Don Anderson, has developed a track record of being a very credible and reliable pollster. He has been used by both political parties. And usually when polls are released and they're not favorable to one political party, that political party tends to question the credibility of the polls. So this is to be expected. Pollsters use a scientific methodology in terms of your sampling, sample population. And you know, Don Anderson's credibility as a pollster has been tried, tested, and proven. As a political party, it is not shoot for you to question the poll. What you need to do is to be informed or be instructed by the poll, because the poll provides an indication of the areas in which you are very weak or in areas in which you are suffering, and this presents an opportunity for you to improve. So anytime you see a political party starts to lambaste polls, it's usually a sign of panicking. Yes? But a poll should be instructive to political parties.
So you're saying that they might be panicking? Is that a sign that they're panicking?
Well, you must be, because if you're very popular a couple months or years ago and today you are neck and neck with an opposition leader who many people believe is uncharismatic, has not been very convincing, then as a leader you must be very concerned about that.
But the argument can be doing that, especially in light of the article that was published by the Miami Herald, that the Prime Minister is now focusing on bigger issues, things that we're looking at Jamaica and an international relations landscape now. So how he power plays, how he leads the island, how he leads the country publicly and internationally, vis-a-vis sitting down and decide that he's going to put on back his green suit, step out with the clerks and go and do that. Because he actually went as far as to say that whenever he's ready, he can turn it on or turn it up.
Yes. So the reality is that you're the Prime Minister of Jamaica, and while you may be respected highly internationally based on your position of your diplomacy and you've been articulate and that may earn you some respect internationally, the reality is that your base is local. Your base is those who you are dependent on to re-elect you or to hold on to state power. And more than any other agent or stakeholder, your base has to remain sufficiently convinced. So it makes no sense for you to be developing an international reputation and gaining respect internationally, but locally, your base feels that it is being alienated, your base is disenchanted or frustrated, because you have to decide what you want to be, the Prime Minister of Jamaica or an international statesperson or statesman.
Why can't you be both? Because
you can be both, but again, you're the Prime Minister of Jamaica. You've been elected to lead the country and to handle or to manage the issues that are affecting the country. And therefore, your primary stakeholders are the voters who elected you and the citizens of the country that you're leading. And they, above everybody else, must feel that you are doing a good job and they must be satisfied with the quality of your leadership. That is primary as the leader of a country. So everything else is secondary. So
then it could be then merely a matter of because the GLP has been accused of being poor communicators. So it could actually be a case whereby he's so busy looking at the quote-unquote big picture that he's ignoring the fact that, listen, we need to communicate so that persons can understand. He's making monetary policy, fiscal policy changes, but he's not doing it in such a way and he's not communicating in such a way that the small man, the little man, the you, the me, the regular persons can actually see and understand what is being done. Could that be the case?
It could be, that could be a factor, but the reality is that when we consider the major indicators of governance, and when people usually look at the economy, we usually look at security.
Economy is growing.
Yeah, but it is abstract because people cannot relate to the economic growth. It is said that the economy is growing, and it is said that inflation is declining, but because when you go to the supermarkets to purchase basic consumer goods, the prices of those goods continue to go up because
but that's not a Jamaican issue, that's global.
Yes, but again, people's experiences and the the data are not always aligned, because the data may be saying one thing, but when you talk to people, they're saying, but it's not trickling down, it's not translating. The economy is growing, but who are the beneficiaries of the economic growth? Maybe those who are shareholders and those who are directors and managers and who have senior managerial and directorial positions in companies. They're benefiting, but the average Jamaican doesn't feel that that growth is translating into an enhanced quality of life. So that is the issue. You have to ensure that when growth is taking place and we boast about the positive things that are taking place, that average Jamaicans can feel that they're a part of all the gains that the country is making. They don't want to feel that the gains are unequally distributed, where the richer is getting richer, but the quality of life of the poor is not changing. It's only a few are benefiting. So you have to be very careful, because abstract data can be misleading, because it just present a bigger picture, which is the general or the aggregate. But it doesn't mean that the macro gains that are taking place are trickling down to improve the quality of life of the average Jamaican. And that is the real issue that is the real issue here.
All right, so explain that now to me in the context of the recent compensation review structure that they have had. We're seeing where the Prime Minister pretty much is getting, what, 214% increase?
Yes.
Put that in light of well, the political directorate is getting big lump sum. Put that in light of what you just said now, the average man, the common man.
Okay, so that's a perfect example. Because, and let us contextualize that. For our public servants in Jamaica are grossly underpaid. In fact, of all Caribbean countries, Jamaica has the lowest GNI per capita, which means that Jamaica has the lowest average income per capita among Caribbean countries, which means that Jamaicans are paid far lower for jobs that others in other Caribbean countries are paid higher salaries for. So they have been underpaid for a long while. Coupled with the fact that they have been asked to accept wage freeze as a condition of the IMF loans that we have been taking over the last several years. So they were forced to accept salary freeze, despite the fact that cost of living has been rising, despite the fact that many of them have been overextending themselves, working under difficult circumstances for many years. When I think about our essential workers, they've been on the front line of providing goods and services to the citizens, and especially in the pandemic, when they were called upon to go beyond the call of duty. The doctors, the nurses, and the teachers, and the firemen and the firewomen, many of them are specialists. They are trained and they are certified. So they are the real engine of development, of service provision, of public service delivery. They are the ones who are doing the real work. Yes. So they would have entered into a period of wage negotiation with the government through their various unions. And the government was holding steadfast. The government said, listen, we're coming out of the pandemic, our revenues have been stretched to the limit. We simply cannot afford to pay you an exorbitant salary increase. We have reduced our debt to GDP ratio. We cannot go back to where we're coming from. We cannot increase public spending. We have to reduce public spending. So we can't offer you any exorbitant salary increase. And in fact, the public servants were considered, they were being described as greedy and selfish. So, you know, those are some of the words that were used to describe them. Finally, they agreed on a 20% increase over a 3-year period. It's not a 20% increase one time. It's a 20% increase over a 3-year period. In some context, that amounts to an additional 10,000 Jamaican dollars per month on the income and the salary of a public sector worker. Very minuscule. It was therefore surprising when the political directorate was asking the public servant to make sacrifice, to accept 20%, because the country cannot afford to, because can't afford to undo the gains we have made over the last years. COVID has depleted our revenues. We just can't, we don't have this fiscal space for any exorbitant salary increase. They gave themselves 200, 214, 300% increase. Yes? This is in spite of the fact that we don't have any performance measurement mechanisms to hold politicians accountable. When you get a job here at CEEN TV or in a public sector organization, you have a job description, and therefore we can use the jurisdiction to evaluate whether or not you're doing a good job or a bad job. Our Prime Minister, our ministers of government, our MPs don't have any accountability mechanisms in place. So we don't really have any reliable mechanism to evaluate or assess whether or not they're doing a good job. But they have given themselves...
But we vote every 5 years.
Yes, but it cannot be fair, and it's certainly inconsistent for you to be telling public servants that you cannot afford. These are people who are barely managing to survive and meager salaries. You gave them 20% because you said you cannot give them any more because the country just doesn't have the fiscal space for any exorbitant salary increase. Yet you have given yourselves, who are doing better than the public servants before. No politician in Jamaica is suffering. Many of the politicians have other sources of income. Many of them are doctors, many of them are lawyers, many are business owners, many have properties. Therefore, they have been insulated from the kinds of economic hardship that average Jamaicans face. So anybody who should get any significant increase must be those who deserve it, not those who is widely perceived
so you're arguing that the politicians, you're arguing that the politicians don't deserve it.
If we're using the measurements or the indicators of governance and the direction that the country is heading into, there's a strong case to be made that the country has not been governed well, that the affairs of the country have been mismanaged. So therefore, what is the basis then for politicians to give themselves a salary increase? If people believe genuinely that things are looking good, things are looking positive, the outlook looks good, you know, crime is trending down, the economy is improving, there's infrastructural growth. People would say, okay, you have made a case that you probably deserve a salary increase. But if people are saying that the country is heading in the wrong direction, they are not confident in the leadership and the governance of the country, what therefore becomes a basis for you to justify such a huge astronomical salary increase.
And again, so what would have been a better approach? Because remember, you know, we just looked at it that GDP, debt to GDP has moved from 148 to 78. All right, that's rough. That's a whole heap down. Unemployment is down. All these things are down. Those things are seemingly trending down. But you have stated earlier that the big picture, the average man is not seeing that. It's not making a difference for him. So what would have been a better approach for the government to take? A
better approach would have been for them to have given themselves a salary increase that was equivalent to the salary increase that was given to the public sector workers. Because that would make the government appear to be fair and reasonable and consistent. If you're saying that we can only give public servants 20%, then you should lead by example and take 20% for yourselves as well. But you cannot be saying that we can only give you 20%, but we have taken 300% for ourselves. That does not give the appearance of the government being consistent or fair. So if the government had said, you know what, the same sacrifices that we are asking the civil servants to take, let us lead by example and take that sacrifice too, yes? And give ourselves a 20% raise in the same way we have given the civil servants a 20% raise. But you can't take 300% and give the public servants 20% over a 3-year period. In many contexts, the salaries of the members of the political directorate have doubled, have almost tripled. There's no way you could justify that in the context of the state of the economy.
So your argument then is that they are out of touch with Jamaica largely, and these are indicating, or these are being indicated, these are some of the indicators that we are seeing from the current polls now. So how can they make amends to this?
How can they make amends? I think people are now more conscious of deliverables rather than promises. People want to see results. People want to see performance. People are no longer willing to give politicians the benefit of the doubt. They're very distrustful and skeptical. So how the government can improve its fortune is by actually taking concrete steps to deliver on some of the things that matter to Jamaicans. If you look at a recent poll, it found that the biggest issue is security. Living in Jamaica has become a life and death situation based on the fact that, you know, murder is so rampant. We've solidified ourselves as one of the murder capitals of the world. So crime is a big issue. The state of emergency has been the only response of the government over the last several years. People want to see something more. People want to see something more long-term. Yes? So I think that the government needs to take concrete steps to show the country that it is serious about delivering on those issues that matter to them.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Damion Gordon, you just heard it from Damion Gordon, assistant lecturer in public policy, University of the West Indies, Mona campus. More to come on the conversation. Welcome back to the conversation. We continue with another guest, Shane Carr, president of G2K, the professional affiliate of the current government. Let's go back over. Yeah, let's go. Welcome back to the conversation. So we continue with Shane Carr, president of G2K, that's the professional affiliated organization of the governing party. Welcome to the conversation, sir. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
So, fictitious and contrived, those are the descriptors that have been issued as it relates to the recently conducted poll that was commissioned by the opposition People's National Party. What are your views on that?
So G2K's stand on it is that what we are focused on and what we are committing to as it relates to those terms issued by the party is not so much of the numbers that were reported. It is more so of the perception being sold and of what is given to the Jamaican people and how it was reported. If you understand and if you look at some of the numbers that were reported, not everything was given to the public at that media briefing. And so subsequent reports by both the pollster and what has been coming out would have shown that what was reported at that press conference was somewhat disingenuous.
You have any examples of what those might be?
Sure. I'll give you one of the main ones. One of the main ones is the decline in positivity rating of the leader. Moving 2020, it was 18.7%. Or let's just give it from the last poll. The last poll would have shown 14.7. Now it's down to 12. And that was not reported by the party at that press briefing. And so it indicates and it shows you the intent of the party and what the perception that the PNP want to give to the Jamaican people.
What's the perception?
So the perception is to have Jamaicans believe that the PNP at this time is a viable option. It also want to sell the perception of Mark Golden being a favorable leader. And I think Jamaicans know. I don't think Jamaicans are in the dark about that. If you look at the last set of internal elections or by-elections, candidate elections by the PNP, you would realize that most of those candidates supported by the leadership of the PNP would not have found favor with a lot of party supporters. And that also in itself would show, how persons see the leader and the trust that the persons have in the leader.
So what should we take from this though? Because when we look, for example, we see, based on the findings of the poll, that Mark Golden is now at 53.2%.
Right.
And Andrew Holness is now down to 54.5. So we're looking at a case whereby Andrew Holness was leading by double digits. Now he's within earshot. This is within the margin of error now.
Right.
So irrespective of whether or not we want to say this man is not doing well or so, it shows that somebody is actually declining. So,
all right, so let's put this into perspective. Now, let's say for some strange reason the numbers would have been factual. Now, for the past couple of months, Andrew Holness, our Prime Minister, would have been seen as, and a lot of, political commentators, a lot of, PNP activists, would have labeled the Prime Minister as being battered and as being, worn out. If you look at the amount of comments being made by the PNP over time and the criticisms. So let's look at that. Let's put it that way, where even when a Prime Minister or when the leader of the party is seen as that by some people, the opposition leader still trail the Prime Minister. So even if you put it in that context, which they have been saying that before this poll, so I'm using their own contextualization of the situation, and even then, Mark Golding's still trail the Prime Minister, and Mark Golding's rating, not only is he trailing, but Mark Golding's rating has declined when you look at his individual percentage.
So you are saying that as bad as the Prime Minister is, he's still better than...
No, I'm not saying as bad
the opposition.
As the I am saying, should you follow the narrative of the PNP prior to the poll, that the Prime Minister was doing so bad, and even after the poll, their leader, because the truth is, a poll was commissioned, and we have to understand, successive administrations, not only government, but I mean, you have companies would have commissioned poll at particular times to test particular things. Now, political parties over the years have commissioned poll for different reasons. And some would have commissioned poll at a time when the populace was not really in favor of some of the decisions made by the governing party. This was one of them. And mind you, I am not condemning the timing of when the party, I mean, they have their right to do that. However, a poll would have reflected the emotions at that particular time. Now, the government in recent time would have embarked on policies and programs, economic stabling policies, such as the compensation review, such as the Road Traffic Act, which would have had some sort of feedback, which you would understand that in some aspect of society was not in agreement with it. And there was a particular feedback. And mind you, the Prime Minister spoke in recent time that there were a few anomalies that have been highlighted as it relates to the compensation package review, which now the Ministry of Finance have put in place programs to correct those. So you have to understand that when that poll was taken, that high of emotion was happening at the same time, and it would have been factored in this result.
So you're saying that the PNP pretty much went on a poll it's for self-soothing purposes then, so they find a time that it's bad for the JLP and then they do the poll right there.
I mean, it is clear.
So it's not a real indicator as to what's really happening then.
It is clear, and I'm not, as I said, I will not even waste the time to criticize the timing of a poll. Because everybody, I mean, they paid for the poll. You can't tell them when to do the poll. But reporting it and how you report it to the people and the picture you try to paint with the results, that is where I have a concern. If you look at, so for example, as I mentioned before, the individual zooming in of the PNP's leader, that was totally left out. And what kind of picture are you painting if you don't give the populace the full story?
Well, you tell me. I'm looking, and 53% of those polled stated to some extent or the other that Jamaica was headed in the wrong direction. And then another 31% of those said that there's no change. So technically, about 84% are thinking that A, we're either going in the wrong direction or we're not going anywhere, or there's no change. What do you have to say? Are those views something that Andrew Holness need to pay attention to, or is nothing for him to worry about?
All right, so the numbers of that poll, for me personally, for G2K, it's not worrying. We may have concerns, but it's not worrying, meaning that the extent to which we analyze and the actions to which we take is that of concern. We would never at any point ignore what the public is saying. And based on our internal assessment, we have not seen where both our internal assessment and what the PNP is saying really match. Now, have we lost some sort of support? Yes, we have. As I mentioned to you before, because of what was happening now, And we have to look at it that this government has taken the decision not to take a band-aid approach to certain issues. What we have decided to do, if you're going to have sustainable growth, if you're going to address issues that are beneficial to the people, you have to take an in-depth approach. And that is one of the things that I commend the Minister of Finance and our Prime Minister for taking that approach. The truth is, at the moment, not everybody would buy in. And some benefits you will see over time. And as I said to you, that poll, if it is correct, would have shown a momentary high in the population.
All right, so you spoke about some of the things that it's a long-term fix. And I'm now remembering the compensation review that you spoke about.
Yes.
We're seeing that some members, the political directorate, has given to themselves more than 200% increase in salaries. Do you think that's justified? No, at this point, in context of everything that we have been going through?
That term of the political directorate giving themselves I'm not remembering the term that he used, it's not correct. No, right. A particular independent committee would have been in charge of all of that. Now, as the Minister of Finance...
What were the extent of the consultations, though? Independent, but to what extent?
Of the consultations?
Yeah, because what we're looking at, we're trying to contextualize
if you listen to the Minister, if you listen to the spokesperson on Finance, when the announcement were made, he clearly was in agreement with it. And the details were before him, and I'm sure talks would have been had before. Now, you have to, in terms of from a policy perspective, when the government is doing any sort of change that relates to policy, because that's the level that the government and the ministers would be in charge of. I mean, usually you consult, and usually knowing the Minister of Finance, and it was indicated that consultation took place with the shadow person on Finance.
So tell me, is it justified? Do you think that's justified?
I think it is justified. If you look at the last time a parliamentarian got an increase. Now, how it was presented.
Look at the last time a teacher got an increase and the extent of the increase that they would have gotten. That's what we're comparing now.
And this is when you look at what this government is really doing for public sector workers. Now, under the PNP, the teachers were forced to have a three-year salary freeze. This government, and if you look at the scope and the approach that Dr. Nigel Clark has taken, it is really to address the anomalies across, be it teachers, be it police. So these things have to be taken into consideration. And when you look at what a minister does, how it was over the years, and I mean the public would have looked into something like that, how it is over the years. So I am a head of an agency that reports to a permanent secretary, that reports to a minister. Now, how can I, as a head of an agency who's reporting, not even directly to the minister, reporting to the permanent secretary, be getting double or 3 times more than the minister who has overall responsibility? And it wouldn't be only for my agency, it would be for the entire ministry. So you have to look at things, and if you look at the structure that is used in different countries.
What we're talking about is the sacrifice that you have asked us to make. You have asked us to, you have looked at us and said, listen, based on the constraints that we have had, we are just coming out of a pandemic. Yes, we have been able to carry down debt, GDP to debt ratio to 78%. We have done all these things. So here's it. I can't give you more than X amount. And we want you to hold strain. We know it's hard, but we're all in this together. And then now, after you have just said that to us, in the same breath, you're saying, well, let me take 200 plus over a period of time.
And there again, you're using the term which makes it seem as if, the ministers themselves would have said, you know what, all right, I'm just going to take that for myself.
Let me change the term. Yes. Okay, let me agree then to hold on to a 200 plus % increase. Why not say no, I can't take that much no, because everybody else is asking is getting 20, 25, 30. Let me try and do the same thing, and then over another period of time we'll look at increasing, so everybody grows together, as opposed to
I'm not an MP, But I've listened to concerns voiced by a member of parliament over the years. And even myself at one point, you know, even if I had the consideration to go that route, based on what I was seeing and what I was hearing as it relates to the concern, would not have been, and I know a lot of young people have that concern. Now, I heard MPs complain based on what they have to do in their communities, in their constituencies. If you look at an MP's office at any particular office day, and the different concerns that are going, sometimes it reached to a point, because obviously over the years, MPs have not been getting enough in terms of CDA funding to carry out or to take care of necessities within their constituencies. Now, I think the last time, I don't even remember, the last 30 odd years since Member of Parliaments got an increase in their raise.
Sure about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you look at that, and look at what they have been doing since then, or what you require of a Member of Parliament to do, really and truly, I cannot argue with it. Now, what I would maybe have a concern with is for us, because when I had to do a lot of reading myself, and what I would have a concern with is how it is being presented to the public in terms of details.
All right, so I'll give you an opportunity to clarify that. When we return, we'll go for a final break. You're watching The Conversation.